Hello and welcome to Lysogene's Reviews, and very much welcome to my Star Trek Top 100, the Top 5. This is the video for my number 5. As I have mentioned in previous videos, I'm doing one video for each episode in my Top 5. I will deep dive into them. I will give overviews. I will give beat by beat recaps, all of that stuff. It's still going to be a long ass video because I'm going to go deep into it and talk a lot about it. So this is my number 5 in my top 100. And before I reveal what my number 5 is, let's refer back to the picture clue that I showed you last week. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to wait till Sunday to record this video. I had said that I would give you all to Sunday to make a guess, but I had to record this late Saturday night in order to have it ready by next Friday because I'm traveling and I won't be able to work on the video while I'm away. So I have to do it late Saturday night. So if you end up guessing correctly after I record this video, I will give you a shout out the next time. However, one person does deserve a shout out for getting the correct answer, and that is Liz Scott. Congratulations, Liz. And to be honest with you, I was kind of counting on Liz to get the correct answer because she seemed to have a lot of knowledge about the scorpions in the last video. So I was like, I bet Liz will know the answer to this. And she did not let me down. She pulled through. She got the correct answer. So let me show you the picture clue again. So here it is. Here's some band from the 80s. And no, Brandon, it's not the Scorpions again. Yeah, I have Scorpion on here twice. I'm referring to a comment that Brandon Neil Howells made. He's just joking around. No, I do not have Scorpion at number 6 and number 5. This is a different band. And Liz was able to correctly identify this band as Van Halen. And she very correctly identified that the connection to Star Trek is Van Halen's song. She identified it as being on the 5150 album. To be honest, that's more than I knew. But I did know the song. And the song goes a little something like this. The best of both the worlds. Dun, 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 dun. The best of both the worlds. Dun, 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 dun. So that's it. My number 5, The Best of Both Worlds, parts 1 and 2 from Star Trek The Next Generation, The Best of Both Worlds, the name of my number 5 episode of my top 100, and also the name of a Van Halen song, apparently from the album 5150. So I have to say, the song predates the episode. So when I very first saw this episode, this song went immediately in repeated loop in my head. The best of both worlds. And to this day, I cannot think of that episode without thinking of the song. The two are just forever linked in my brain. So that's why I said in my picture clue video that if someone else were to show that picture and say, oh, this is a Star Trek episode, my brain would have immediately went, the best of both the worlds. It's worth watching that video, by the way. I went and watched the video. This is actually a screenshot from that video of the best of both worlds. They're doing this duck walk across the stage, and it's so cheesy. It's so 1980s, and yet the crowd is like, they're so happy. I'm sure they're having the time of their lives. They look like the happiest crowd to see. It's Eddie Van Halen, Sam Hagar, Alex Van Halen, just duck walking across the stage. The best of both the worlds. Okay, enough about that song. Let us get into the episode the two-parter, actually, but I count two-parters as one as long as they're called parts 1 and 2. I kind of think of it as one big movie, even if it was split up by a summer when it originally aired. But I do count it as a one. So let's go ahead and get into the actual episode itself. So, The Best of Both Worlds, I think widely regarded as one of the top episodes in The Next Generation and in the entire franchise. There's one dissenting voice who I'm very close to. If you know my brother, Mark, from Enchantment of Eternity. I don't know. I guess I've just been hearing him a lot over and over and over again over the years, talking about how this episode is overrated. And I'm not here to argue with him, but I'm just here to give my point of view because... I haven't talked about it too much on my channel. I think it probably was in my Next Generation top 10 way back when, but I haven't really talked about it too much on the channel. So it gives me a chance to express my opinion, and that is that it is absolutely not even a tiny bit overrated. It deserves every bit of accolades that it has gotten, even more so, if anything. And this is my opinion. And I think it deservedly is one of the most highly thought of episodes in the franchise. I think besides just being a great two-parter and having that great cliffhanger, which I'll get to momentarily, it is the pair of episodes that I think really put Star Trek television back on the map again. Of course, it had made a comeback with Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, with the films. Then Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, was a huge success. So the Star Trek franchise had already made its comeback, but I think to have made its true comeback in television, to be put back on the map again as something that matters, I think in retrospect, it's these two episodes. It's this cliffhanger. To me, that's what I think put Star Trek television back on the map again. Now, later in this top 5, I'll talk about an episode in The Next Generation that I think was the turning point as far as quality goes, but that's a different thing. I think I can pinpoint when the show really started consistently getting better, as opposed to when the show became popular again and when people were interested again. And I think these are the episodes that did that. So The Best of Both Worlds deserves a lot of credit for that. Now, I am going to go through this beat by beat, which I'm going to do for all the episodes in my top 5. But first, I do have to talk about the most important thing about this episode. Probably the reason why it is in this top 5. And that is the cliffhanger. And it is unequivocally the greatest cliffhanger in television history. Star Trek has tried to duplicate it several times and have failed. Every year in The Next Generation after this is let's do a season-ending cliffhanger, and nothing comes close to this. Nothing. I think the only season-ending cliffhanger that comes close to this as far as quality would be my number 6, which is the Voyager episode Scorpions Part 1 and 2, but it's not anywhere near as good as a cliffhanger. The episodes are great, but the cliffhanger is not anywhere close to being as great, and nothing is in Star Trek, in my opinion. So when I first saw this, it wasn't when it originally aired, because I fell off the Star Trek Next Generation train in the second season. I might have made it to the end. I don't know if I made it to the very end of the second season before I dropped off. I made it to at least Q Who, which was, I think it was episode 18 or 19 or something. So I made it close to the end, and then I was like, this show's not that good. And I did not come back for season 3. And I did not watch season 4 as it aired either. So I rediscovered The Next Generation by watching reruns in between seasons 4 and 5, and then caught back on at season 5, and then had to go back and watch the reruns, and then so then I saw Best of Both Worlds and rerun. Actually, I think, if memory serves, I might have saw part 2 first, or at least I saw the previously on. I think I saw the previously on. I was like, oh, I can't watch this because I didn't see part 1. But anyway, when I did first see them, I saw them back to back. I did not have that whole summer off. So when I think about the people who were watching Next Generation as it aired, who stuck through it after this crappy first 2 seasons, and were watching this as it first aired, to have that cliffhanger have to wait for the summer, I would have been like, what? I have to wait for the whole summer for this? What? At least we'll have to wait like 2 years or whatever, like it is for Strange New Worlds. But that's not as good of a cliffhanger either. But that moment will always give me chills, no matter how many times I see it. Always. The whole do 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 do, zooming in on Riker. Do 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 do. Mr. Worf, fire. That. It just gives me chills every time. It's the best cliffhanger. I can't imagine having to wait the whole summer to find out what. I'm so glad that the first time I saw it, I just got, okay, now I'll watch part 2. Like, I'll probably have to wait the next day because I was watching it on syndication. But like, I had to wait the next day. but I can't imagine having to wait the whole summer because that is an amazing cliffhanger. Still one of the best of all time. So that is the biggest reason, of course, why this makes my top 5. But I think that it is a great episode beyond that. I think possibly some of the last truly great Borg episodes, aside from the Scorpion episodes, which again were my number 6. The Night Borg is in my top 100 as well, although it's kind of a different kind of Borg episode. But once you get into Descent, and once you get into like beyond Scorpion and Voyager and all of the Borg Queen nonsense, so, and I don't care what people say, First Contact is not a good movie. They totally retconned this episode and tried to put the Borg Queen in here. The Borg Queen definitely does not exist in this. And the Borg are so much better without the Borg Queen. So much more interesting. Anyways, I digress. Let's get into the episode. So we see our crew first arrive at this colony where there was a distress call and has been completely wiped out. And it's a pretty creepy scene. Like, they're like, oh, we should be in the center of town right now. And there's just this big gap, this big chasm. I mean, even with the 90s technology, it still is effectively shocking and creepy. Then we get the introductory credits. And then we get Admiral Hansen and Lieutenant Commander Shelby, and we get the confirmation that this is the Borg. Now, let me talk about Admiral Hansen for a second, because I did a video with my brother recently. I did it on his channel. Actually, I think right now it's a patron-only video, and he'll have it on his channel for everyone later. We did a video talking about Captain Jellicoe, and we were talking about how he becomes Admiral Jellicoe in Prodigy and how he fits in with all the admirals in Starfleet, because all the admirals in Starfleet are either assholes or they're just downright evil, except for Admiral Ross from Deep Space Nine. That was the only exception we made, but we forgot about Admiral Hansen. Admiral Hansen's a good admiral. He's totally legit. He's a totally solid dude. Like, I like Admiral Hansen, and we just forgot about him. There's probably another one out there, too, we forgot. But certainly Admiral Hansen, he's a good admiral. This is where we first get the idea that Riker is refusing the captain's chair once again. Now, that had happened at least once before in it was in the second season. I don't remember the second season much. The one where they play those games or whatever. Was it that one or something? I don't know. or the one with his dad. It was the one with his dad, wasn't it? Whatever it was. I have a very foggy memory of the second season because I haven't watched it very often. But whatever episode that was, this is not the first time that this concept had been introduced. In fact, Admiral Hansen says this is the third time that Starfleet has offered him the chair, and he just refuses to sit in it. So they're trying to kind of give an in-universe explanation as to why Riker would just be commander for so long when he's supposed to be so good. Then why is he not being promoted to captain ever? And sometimes I don't want in-universe explanations of things, like why did the Klingons not have ridges in the original series, or why did the Klingons change their look from Discovery season 1 and 2? Why are there no more holograms in the Discovery's ships, or on the Enterprise because Captain Pike ripped them all out? None of we don't need that, but this. I kind of do want an in-universe explanation, because then you turn into Harry Kim. Like, where Harry Kim is just an ensign forever. How can Commander Riker be supposedly such a great commander and never get promoted to captain? So this explores that a little bit. And these episodes really are very Riker-focused. And I think they're a really strong character episode for Riker, which is another reason why I enjoy it. I enjoy really strong character sketches throughout Star Trek, and I think this is a good Riker sketch throughout both of these parts. So then we have Riker and Shelby button heads, the whole early bird gets the worm thing, and Data having that funny line. Data always had those silly lines. There are no avatar life form or vermicular life forms, or whatever, avitation life forms, whatever the technical term for birds is, or vermicular life forms. Commander Shelby has erred, and Geordi's like, that's not what she meant, but she did err, all right. So we start that tension that starts building up. Also, Admiral Hansen had mentioned to Picard that he needs to give Riker a good kick in the butt to get his career moving, or he's going to look like he's standing still. So Picard does do that. And I actually thought this was kind of cool, because it's not something that I would necessarily think of Picard doing, like caring about someone's career in that way. Or I mean, like, why are you still here? It's like, why are you not taking the captain's chair? So I did really like that scene. I think I have to suspend disbelief a little bit that Picard was surprised when Admiral Hansen told him that Riker was offered the Melbourne, I believe it is, in this time. And he goes, the Melbourne, he hasn't told you? Would you not tell the commanding officer that you're offering his first officer a command of his own? Like, you would definitely tell the captain of the ship. But, that's just a little nitpick. Whatever. So anyways, we have Picard giving Riker a little push, and then Riker talking to Troy. And now this is where we start exploring his character. He's like, why am I still here? And he's like, all those things about Shelby, I used to have those things in me. I liked those things in me. And Troy has a line about, well, you're more seasoned now. And he's like, seasoned? That's a terrible thing to say to a man. And the Riker clone, who turns into to Thomas Riker in season 6, also kind of has the same attitude. Is kind of like, what the fuck, dude? By then, I think it gets a little old, because I think Riker's dad had the same thing on him, and I'm like, I don't know. But this Riker himself is questioning it. And I do like that. And I don't know if we ever really get a really strong reason for why he ultimately does stay on the Enterprise. after this episode. Obviously, the Melbourne is not an option anymore because it gets destroyed at Wolf 359. But as Shelby says at the end, I'm sure you can have any command you want now, sir. And he probably could have, but he still stays on the Enterprise. So there's not really probably a really strong reason given for that, but I like that they're exploring it. I like that they're putting it out there. So then the intensity really picks up when this other starship just completely disappears. Just out of nowhere. So at this point, we're not seeing the Borg yet, and that really adds to the intensity. We had seen them, obviously, in Q-Who, but we hadn't really seen them yet in this episode. So they're just ominous force, just out there. And I think that's some of the most creepy stuff in any fiction, when you don't see the enemy, but they're just ominous and their presence is felt. So when that other starship just vanishes, that's really effectively creepy, and that just really retches up the tension. And then we do finally get to see the Borg, and then we get that classic scene. We have engaged the Borg. With the vocal music in the background. So, one of the most intense scenes, one of the most classic scenes in Star Trek. And the whole phrase, we have engaged somebody, something, something, has been repeated several times in Star Trek since then. It's kind of like how Star Wars does that. I have a bad feeling about this a lot of times. So we have engaged something, gets repeated several times. But this was the first one. And to me, still a really classic scene. And as mysterious and creepy as it was to not see the Borg, when we do finally get to see it, it feels like a good payoff. And that dramatic line that Picard gives, we have engaged the Borg, with the pause. He has to have the pause in there. We have engaged the Borg. It's so perfect. It is so perfect. It is a payoff for all the tension that has built up. And yet, there's still more tension to come. So then when Captain Picard first tries to speak with the Borg, this is a really effective scene too, because it just shows that the Borg do not give a shit, that they view the humans as insects, as nothing. They don't even let him finish his sentence. He goes, I am Captain, and they go, Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Starship Enterprise, Registry 1701D. And they just talk right over him, demonstrating that they do not respect their life form at all. And at this point, it's still kind of a mystery to the crew, like why they seem to be so interested in Captain Picard himself. They're asking Captain Picard to beam over, and then they'll be on their merry way, and they don't know why. So they have this conversation about, well, I thought they weren't interested in individuals. They were just interested in our technology. And someone says, it appears their priorities have changed. So in this episode, they're acknowledging what was established in Q-Hugh, was that they were only interested in technology. And they're presenting it as, I guess something has changed now. I guess now they're interested in people as well. So now they're interested in assimilating. Like, this is a new thing now. Which, of course, all future Star Trek projects would retcon and make it out like they always have been interested in assimilating people, which is certainly not what they were thinking of in Q-Who. But it's a good retcon. I don't mind that retcon. Not all retcons are bad. I don't mind that retcon at all. I mind the Borg Queen retcon, but I don't mind this one. So to try to avoid the Borg, they use the old hide in the nebula trick. It's a good thing that they're happens to be a handy dandy nebula that you can hide in whenever you need one. That happens to a lot of the starships over the course of Star Trek history, where, we gotta hide from our enemy. Oh, look, there's a nebula. That'll hide us for a little bit. I joke, but I don't mind it. It's fine. So while they're, hiding out from the Borg, the tensions, of course, are rising up. This is just such an intense episode that builds and builds until we get to that cliffhanger. So the tension is rising even more as they're hiding from the Borg and the nebula, and you see the Borg cube kind of searching around ominously, trying to find the Enterprise, and they're right around them, but they can't see them. Good stuff. This is where we get the classic Riker and Shelby confrontation in the turbo lift, where Riker says to Shelby, "You do the run around me again, I'll snap you back so hard you'll think you're a first-year cadet again." I don't know what that means, but it sounds like a good line, I guess. I don't know. But I think her lines are stronger. She's like, "You're in my way. If you can't make the big decisions, Commander, I suggest you make room for someone who can." Oh, snap! Oh, Riker. She knocked you down. Sorry, Riker, but she wins. Anyways, we get the scene eventually where they are forced to leave the nebula because conveniently now there are storms. I don't think they call them ion storms, but there were these storms that forced them to leave. And then the Borg do catch up with the Enterprise, and they do ultimately take Captain Picard. And that's a really intense scene as well. So I would highly recommend, if you haven't already, watch the animated series version of this scene. It was done by a fan. It's not official, but it's also widely viewed, and the dude who did it was interviewed on Trek Culture, so it's out there. It's pretty popular. Personally, I think it's a lot better than the very short Treks. He did one for the Voyager episode Threshold as well, which is so good. But they just did the scene in the animated series style, and is so good. And so now when I watch the scene, all I can think of is the animated series version. But that's neither here nor there. It's a really intense scene. Our captain has now been kidnapped. Once Captain Picard is on the Borg ship, he has the line, "I will resist you with every fiber of my being." And the Borg say, possibly for the first time, I don't know that they said it in Q, but they say it as a response to Picard saying, "I will resist you with every fiber of my being." They say, "Resistance is futile." The classic Borg line, which I believe this is the first time they say it. And thus, assimilation has now been folded into Star Trek canon, as they're now going to assimilate Picard. Now, after the big Shelby confrontation, it's Troy who puts Riker in his place, as Riker wants to lead the away team, and Shelby's like, "But sir," and Riker's like, "Do what I say." And Troy's like, "Commander, it is inappropriate for you to lead the away team." I actually like Troy in this episode. She doesn't do a lot, but I think she's strong in the few scenes that she is on. She says it's inappropriate for you to lead the away team. Your place is on the bridge, which is absolutely correct, and he defers to Troy. So they go on an away team with Shelby, Worf, and Dr. Crusher. Why is Dr. Crusher going on there? And I guess I think they might find him and he might be injured or something, but it seems more like a guerrilla mission. There should be a Worf and a bunch of security dudes is what it should be. I think there was one security guy there, but it should be a security team. Why is Dr. Crusher going on this? But it's so that she can go, "Jean-Luc," when she sees him. It's for plot convenience. But I've made these comments before, I think even in this top 100, about how the way teams make no sense at all. I think he talked about this for Mirror Mirror. Like, why was Lieutenant Uhura down on that planet during negotiations for dilithium crystals? Like, why? So anyway, I don't want to get too sidetracked on that. So I actually do love how we get the first glimpse of Locutus from the side, so it kind of looks like it's Captain Picard, and you can't really tell he's Borg yet, and so then he turns around. That's super creepy, super effective, and that's where Dr. Crusher goes, John Luke, and then Worf goes, Captain, and then plays the distorted Trek music. Da, 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 burr, 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 burr. I'm sorry. Then they get back to the ship and report to. Oh, wait, I guess Data was on this away mission too, because they get back to the ship and report to Riker what had happened. And Data's like, it appears that Captain Picard has been altered by the Borg. Altered? And then Worf is basically crying like a baby. He's like, it is a Borg! Like, I don't know. That's how I always viewed that scene. That I can't do it without laughing, but that he was really upset to see his captain like that. But he does come off a little whiny in that particular scene. So this is all building to we now get that huge cliffhanger that I talked about a little earlier. So I don't want to get into too much detail on it again. But all I gotta say is do 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 do, Mr. Worf, fire, it, to be continued. So then we go into part 2. So we get the resolution now of that cliffhanger, and they didn't know how they were going to resolve this. They're like, oh, well, I guess we'll figure it out. I don't know. But I think they did a fine job. Now, I have heard the complaint that the big cliffhanger is too easily resolved. Like, it takes like 5 seconds, or like, oh, well, the weapon doesn't work because Locutus knows about it. And so that's it. And I've heard some say that there might even be anticlimactic, which I strongly disagree with, because that is just the immediate threat that is resolved. The overall threat that Captain Picard is now a Borg and the Borg are heading to Earth directly, that is still very much in existence. It's still very intense. Nothing has been resolved. I think an anticlimactic cliffhanger would be one where the entire storyline is resolved in the first few seconds. So if they just like destroyed the Borg ship in 5 seconds and like, oh, no, let's do something else for the rest of the episode, that would be anticlimactic. This was just simply resolving the immediate threat. And also, I have no problem with it because it makes sense. It makes total sense that Locutus would have absorbed all of Captain Picard's knowledge. And maybe that is something that they just invented in order to resolve this cliffhanger, but it is something that becomes part of Borg lore, not to be confused with Data's brother, but Borg canon, I should say, moving forward for the rest of the series. And it makes total sense that the Borg, once they assimilate somebody, they would gain all of their knowledge. So, of course, they already know about that plan. Makes 100% sense. So I don't have any problem with this resolution whatsoever, because the overall threat is then very much intense. Then we go into the scene where Admiral Hansen is talking to them over subspace. I notice he accidentally called Shelby Lieutenant. This is the first time I noticed that. He actually calls her Lieutenant. Little mistake there. So then he tells the story of how he first met Picard, and he's like, there's no way in hell the man that I knew would assist the Borg. See, I like Hansen. He's not a bad admiral. I like him. And he tells Riker he's a casualty of war. And then This is where Commander Riker gets promoted to captain. And I like this as a storytelling device, especially going along with Commander Riker's story arc. Now, Captain Riker, temporarily here, goes along with his story arc throughout this 2-episode arc. So then we get to scene on the Borg ship where it zooms in on Picard. So we see a little tiny tear coming down. So we know that Picard is still in there. Still got some humanity in there somewhere. Now, there's a scene where Worf says to Riker, "The Borg have neither honor nor courage. That is our greatest advantage." Really? I don't know. What does that even mean, really? I mean, to be honest, that sounds kind of stupid. And Riker just says, "Well, I hope that's enough." Riker is probably thinking the same thing. Yeah, that's kind of dumb. I think Worf puts a little too much stock in honor. Like, honor doesn't mean shit against enemies such as the Borg. And when they end up defeating them, it has nothing to do with them not having honor. I don't know. Worf is a little bit too much on the honor and courage thing sometimes. Anyways. We got another scene in engineering where I noticed Shelby references Barclay. I don't think that's the first time I've noticed that, but I guess I'd forgotten that she does that. Barclay at this point had appeared for the first time a few episodes earlier in Air Date Order, which was Hollow Pursuit. He doesn't get to appear in this episode. He just gets mentioned. Yeah, I'd kind of forgotten that. And then Riker and Shelby have the first good conversation, good solid conversation, where he says to her, "You have a lot to learn," and then he smiles, "Almost as much as I had to learn when I came on board as Picard's first officer." And that, of course, leads up to Riker. And the next scene, choosing Shelby as his first officer. And his logic is sound. He says, "Worf, Data, I need you where you are." And Shelby's kind of an outsider. She makes perfect sense as the first officer and totally legit. So I think about this sometimes, the parallel universe and parallels where Worf is the first officer because Riker has become captain because of the Picard was lost to the Borg. Was Shelby in that universe? She was probably in that universe originally, right? And then got promoted already by that time, probably. And then Worf took her place. Anyways, I think about these silly things. Moving on. So Data reports that Starfleet has reported that it has engaged the Borg at Wharf 359. See, they're already using that "we have engaged the Borg" thing again. In the next episode, the engage, the whatever, just gets used a bunch. So actually, let me jump back a little bit to that scene where Riker promotes Shelby. I think I was jumping ahead of myself a little bit. So right after that scene, Riker gives the world's weakest pep talk. Like, nobody was inspired by that. And then he goes into the ready room and he looks at the chair and goes, "What would you do?" You know, talking to Picard. And then Guinan comes in, and this is a really strong scene. We don't really get a lot of Riker Guinan scenes, and this was a good one, where she tells him the truth and says, "You know, you're going to have to do something you don't want to do, and you're going to have to let go of Picard." And she says that he's more than family, more than friendship, and I'm willing to let him go. I've always wondered what the hell that means. For a while, I thought it implied a romantic relationship, more than family, more than friendship. What does that mean? I think it's just a really strong bond. That's all. Anyways, so she tells him, "You gotta let him go." And Riker is like, "How can I? He wrote the book on this ship." And this is my favorite line, where Guinan says, "Well, if the Borg knows everything he knows, then it's time to throw that book away." Love that. Such good advice, which Riker does use brilliantly. So then we get They rival at Wolf 359, and we see all those desecrated ships. Oh, devastating scene. At this point in Star Trek, I don't think we've really seen anything like this. I think this would be the whole, oh, this is against Gene Roddenberry's vision thing that Deep Space Nine always got accused of. But this was really powerful and devastating. And our favorite Admiral, Admiral Hansen, is gone. So we have at least one character that we have a connection to who's gone. And the ship that Riker was supposed to take over, gone. So this just shows how high the stakes are and just how dismal it looks and how low their odds of success are, which just really raises the tension. Now you're really like, how are they getting out of this? And this is not just after the cliffhanger. This is like about halfway through the episode where we're still like, how are they getting out of this? So then Riker slowly starts unfolding his plan, and I love the choice to not reveal the plan to the audience. And I think Star Trek is usually pretty good at this, but there have been some shows or films that make the mistake of revealing a plan to the audience. And it's good that we get to just see it unfold. First step is separating the saucer section, and but they're doing it in a different way than what Picard knew about. And Riker having this little conversation with Locutus, and his goal was just to get his location. But Locutus, I love how he was like, it is more likely that this is just a deception. Riker was pretending that he was trying to negotiate with them, and he knew perfectly well that they weren't going to buy it. He was just trying to get Locutus's location, which was very clever, and I love that conversation. I love how he evokes Captain Picard. Captain Picard implicitly trusted me. Wouldn't you implicitly trust me as well? Love that. Love all that. And the saucer section plan is, of course, different than the one that Picard knew about. It's all just kind of a distraction to send Data and Worf on their secret mission. So that's all very clever. Now, the only problem I guess I have rewatching this now is I had always thought that they had this planned out from the beginning, like what they were going to do with Picard once they got him over, but they kind of didn't. They were just kind of like, hey, let's go get Picard and something will work out for us. I think they thought they had some possible avenues that they could explore, but they actually didn't come up with Data's plan until later, where Data was going to plant a command in the Borg consciousness. But I don't know. They knew that if they got Picard, they could figure something out, I think. And I always remember the scene where he goes, Beverly, Crusher, Doctor. I don't know why that always sticks out. Whenever I hear of anybody named Beverly, I always think Beverly, Crusher, Doctor. Anyways, so now Locutus, of course, is on the Enterprise. So I think the reason why I can forgive them for taking Locutus over without a real solid plan is because the plan that they do ultimately come up with is really strong. I think it was a brilliant plan, actually. I think Data's plan to plant a command in the Borg consciousness is absolutely brilliant. Now, it doesn't work out at first because he can't access the high-level stuff, like any of the things that would shut down their weapons or shields or anything like that. He can't access it too. So he's got to try to find some kind of lower level access stuff. And while he's doing that, you know, they're being attacked by the ship. Things are intense. And then Riker gives the order to Wesley to ram the Enterprise and to set a course directly into the Borg ship, is what he tells Wesley to do. Not to engage just yet, but he tells him to set a course. And I love that look Wesley gives, like, what the fuck? Like, what? And he's like, you heard me, Lieutenant. Or I guess he's Ensign. Sorry, Ensign. He acts like he's a lieutenant or lieutenant commander all the time. But so anyways, and then right when he goes, NK, and then Data comes in, Data to Riker. I have found a command that should work. And I love this scene where Riker is just waiting to hear it, and Data keeps saying, "Stand by. I can't stand by, Mr. Data," until he finally gives it. Now, of course, I left out the part where Data gets his idea for this low-level command from Picard himself, who goes, sleep, Data. I can't tell you how many times that this is how much of a nerd I am. How many times I have said sleep, Data when I am really tired. That is my way of expressing fatigue. But with him, it was not a way of expressing fatigue, but to suggest a course of action. And I love Data's reasoning to figure that out. And then, of course, we get that intense scene where Riker just is like, "I can't stand by, Mr. Data." Was it a little bit contrived? Sure. Was it a little bit dramatic? Sure. But it works so well. The intensity of these episodes is just so high all the way up to the bitter end. There's never a disappointing moment. So then Data does put the Borg to sleep. I mean, I thought maybe they could have made it so that the Enterprise had to actually still fire on them and not just all of a sudden they just explode. But whatever. Made for a dramatic scene. Now, I ask you, would they have been able to do this with the Borg Queen there? The Borg Queen would know what they were up to because she's like, invincible, and she's a Mary Sue and knows everything, and the most obnoxious villain. I just hate the Borg Queen. She definitely was not here. I can't believe they tried to retcon her into this. Anyways, so that saves the day. And never mind that the Borg could send 100 more ships anytime they wanted. But that's like an ongoing criticism about the Borg. I mean, that's a nitpick more. That at any point they could just send a whole bunch of ships and wipe out Earth if they really wanted to. They always send one. But that, I mean, if they sent more than one, there wouldn't be a show anymore. So, you gotta do what you gotta do. So, back to parallels, though. I gotta get back to parallels. I do also wonder how, in that parallel universe where they had defeated the Borg, yet Riker is still captain, how that happened. So, I guess maybe they got the sleep command, but then they weren't able to save Picard. He dies. I don't know. It doesn't matter, but I wonder these things. I do. So then we get to the ending. There's this nice little scene with Picard saying, well, first he says, how much do you remember? Everything, which is kind of depressing. But then he says, including some sly maneuvering by a former first officer of mine. So that's nice. That's nice. Then we get the conclusion of Riker's story where Riker's just like, excuse me, but my career plans are nobody's business but my own. And this is the key thing. This is the thing that I'm glad they included, was Picard like drinking the cup of tea and then just staring out the window, and just, you can tell that he's affected. And now I'm not including the episode Family in this top 100, but that was a necessary follow-up to this episode. It's one of the few times where Star Trek does a good job of following through with the character's trauma. More so in the 60s and 90s Trek era, the legacy Trek shows. I think that modern Trek does a much better job at this. But the older Trek, Chief O'Brien goes through this really traumatic experience where he believes he's in prison for 20 years. Next episode, totally okay. Geordi gets brainwashed by the Romulans and it totally fucks him up. And Council Troy says to him, we will work on this together, except that we won't, because this is never getting mentioned again and you're going to be fine in the next episode. Like, It drives me crazy when Star Trek does this. So this is one area where they really did it right, where they actually follow through with the trauma that Picard would experience having been assimilated by the Borg. So I love that. So that scene at the end where they show Picard with his teacup, very, very necessary, very on point. So that wraps up my recap of the episodes. So as you can tell, as I was going through this, I don't think there's any dull moment. I don't think that there's any I don't have any real criticisms. I have like some funny nitpicks that I like to throw out there, some of which I could have for a lot of Star Trek episodes, like the old hide in the nebula thing and things like that. But I don't really have a lot of negative things to say about this episode other than those little nitpicks. And it's just that the tension just goes up and up and up. And then you get the cliffhanger. And then you get a little bit of a lull after the cliffhanger, and then the tension builds back up and up and up. Also, a really strong character story for Riker, as I mentioned. Great acting, I dare say, all throughout these two parts. And this is the episodes that put the Borg on the map. It is unfortunate what happens to the Borg in the future. I think First Contact is when they jump the shark. I know people think that's a good movie, but I think it ruined the Borg when they introduced the Borg Queen. I don't know how many times I'm going to say this. Sorry, I can't help myself. I hate the Borg Queen. Anyways, that's why these episodes, as a collective whole, as a two-parter, best of both worlds, come in at number 5. They're in my top 5. And the entire Star Trek franchise, all 700 episodes that there are. This is in my top 100 at number 5. Now, I feel like I should be giving a rating out of 10 because after the end of a review, I always do ratings out of 10. Let me tell you a little secret. Everything in my top 5 is a 10 out of 10. Actually, everything in at least the top 10 is a 10 out of 10, probably beyond my top 10. So I don't know how far it goes back. Maybe back to number 20. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at it. But maybe even my whole top 25 is a 10 out of 10. I don't know. But anyways, it goes without saying it's a 10 out of 10. So I'm not going to give ratings. So this is a classic. It deserves every accolade it's ever gotten. And it is number 5. So stay tuned later this month for my number 4. But first, next week, I will do my picture clue video for my number 4. It'll be a little different. I promise it won't be an 80s heavy metal band this time. No more of that. It won't be that anymore. It will be something completely different. And that will be my picture clue for my number 4. And my actual video for my number 4 will be out here for you 2 weeks from now. So please subscribe if you have not already. Check out all that stuff, and I will see you really soon. Goodbye.